Hello, everyone. So today we are going to get into mid-19th century France and basically the reign of one Napoleon III. Okay, so who is this Napoleon III? And we had introduced him slightly in earlier videos. So he's a guy that eventually will become the Emperor of France, again. And he's a guy that was underestimated. Sometimes when you look at the way that people can come to power, many times they get to that position because they have incredible confidence in themselves and other people doubt them. Napoleon III is a great example. When he first came into power as president of France, many people referred to him as Napoleon the Small, just thinking that he wasn't smart enough or really didn't have, the gusto, if you will, to do a lot of big things. But he was an incredibly driven man. Just to give you an idea of his of how driven he was, a quote from him, he says, "I shall never submit to any attempt to influence me. I follow only the promptings of my mind and hear nothing. Nothing shall trouble the clear vision of my judgment or the strength of my resolution." Pretty brilliant. And basically, what he is going to focus on early in his term, and I'll talk about all his stuff, but it's consolidating power. It's getting himself to a short-term elected position to becoming another emperor of France. So how does he do it? Well, according to the French Constitution, he can only run for one term, okay? And what he does is initially he petitions the National Assembly to change the law so that he could run for re-election, okay? They refuse, and then he keeps it real simple. On December 1st, 1851, he uses the military to seize control of the government. So it's kind of a coup against himself. Not himself. Well, yeah, technically, because he's the president. So we'll be more specific, it's really like a coup against the legislature, okay? And so what his ideas are is he's not overthrowing anything. People are still going to have the right to vote. Follow me. But he's going to initially try to do some things now that he has control of the government, but allow people to kind of have a voice. So how does he do this? Well, he will immediately institute universal male suffrage, okay? And he is going to hold a constitutional vote after that male suffrage. So election, this one here, election number 1, if you will. And what is he going to give people the right to do is to vote to change the Constitution, in which he would be able to run for re-election, and that time the term would be for 10 years. That is approved. He will then run for re-election and win with 7.5 million yes votes to 640 no votes, to 640,000 no votes. So it's ridiculous. 1 year later, he's going to have another election, so make this a democratic process, in which that the monarchy should be restored with him at its head. And with 97% of the vote, which is an insane number, so it was probably doctored a lot, he wins, and the concept of the republic is kind of dead again. Awesome. Okay, so what he is gonna do is still give people some choice. So he is going to set up the government with technically still a single house legislature, which again were elected by universal male suffrage. The people here would serve for 6 terms, but their only power was to approve laws. Interestingly enough, the only person who could introduce laws was Napoleon III. So they did say yes or no on laws, but they couldn't introduce laws. So I guess that's fair. Everything else, like the military, civil service, budget policy, the police, everything is controlled by Napoleon still. So you don't really see any changes there. So he's in charge, okay? There's no real republic. Now, right away, his big thing is going to be trying to catch France up with the there's a second wave of the Industrial Revolution, and trying to get France back into a position in which they can do some things, okay? And so, like, the first thing he's going to do is focus big time on infrastructure. Okay, the government is going to subsidize the building of railroads, harbors, roads, and canals. Okay, so we're growing here. He is going to triple iron production, and with all these jobs and all this expansion, he's going to try to keep workers satisfied by providing free hospital care, medicine for workers, and also actually having the government build and improve housing conditions for the working class. So that's all of that is a pretty big deal. Now, the biggest thing that he becomes known for, however, though, is within France, is going to be the rebuilding of Paris. And when I say the rebuilding of Paris, basically by this point, Paris has a lot of areas that are run down, beat up, very tight and narrow, some issues with crime, and he's basically just going to hire this guy, George Eugene Haussmann, to fix all of that. If you look a couple things that were created, you have the Rue de Rivoli. They were very big on making big and wide streets, as you see here, big on parks. This is the Bois de Vincennes, so a huge park. Now, they had to rip a lot of stuff down, and they also seized a lot of area outside France, which was outside Paris, which was questionably legal. And so the whole idea was that we're going to seize this land, we're going to rip all the old stuff down. They actually ripped down the old city walls, and we are going to widen streets, we're going to put in open squares, we're going to put in a underground sewage system, we're going to follow the pathway down by London, which is huge, a public water supply that's safe and, not infested with cholera, gas lights for streets at night, and really just make Paris look wonderful. And as you can see here, you got these big streets. It's hard to see, but it's got the lamps are right through here. You see the modern day picture, what it used to be like, what it is like now. Now, there was a side note to this. A lot of this was done to open Paris up to preventing revolutionaries from barricading streets and seizing control of sections of the city. So just in case anybody wants to revolt against the emperor, we're going to make sure that that doesn't happen. Now, he also wants to do some things, again, to liberalize some basic policies, which is interesting because he is an emperor, okay? There's no doubt. Most of the legislative stuff, it's all done for show. But there are basic things that you have to be careful of because in the end, he could anger all the people. And so he doesn't want a giant revolution, okay? So what do? We're going to put in some policies to help people out, okay? First and foremost, he is going to legalize trade unions and give unions the power to strike. Huge. He is then going to allow people to run from multiple parties or independently. And that's really important because for what little power the legislature had, this allows more people an option to get involved in the legislature. So that's huge. Now, eventually, he will also give the legislature the power to debate the budget. Now, this is important because it means that they're going to put things in and out of the budget, and then they're going to he just gives people a little bit more say in the process, so he's not a complete dictator. And then eventually he wants to make sure this is all done on the up and up, so we want to make sure it's quote-unquote legal, and as a result, in 1870, they are going to approve a new constitution with all of these new changes in it. So that'll work. Foreign policy, you had some ups and downs. The downs will massively outweigh the ups here. First and foremost was in Mexico, okay? So Mexico had some rulers that were going through, and it was a little bit unstable. So in the 1860s, he's going to send in troops to Mexico to try to sustain order, if you will, to protect the economic interests that France had in Mexico. And they kind of had some influence. Also realizing that there was a little bit of upheaval in Mexico, they took the opportunity to basically install a new ruler as the Emperor of Mexico, and that was Archduke Maximilian of Austria. He becomes Emperor Maximilian of Mexico. This was immediately met with resistance, but because the French had a strong military presence here, there wasn't a whole lot that Austria could do. Not Austria, sorry, he's from Austria, that Mexico could do. But later on, due to some issues in Austria, due to some issues with the Germans, they eventually are going to have to pull out of this area of Mexico. And as a result, there is a complete revolution, and Maximilian is overthrown and then executed. And on the right, you see actually a picture of Maximilian in his cell, as some people are upset as he is going to be led away for his execution. So Mexico didn't work out well. Now, in Italy, there were some things that actually worked out. They, being the French, are going to actually kind of help, if you will, with the Italians gaining their freedom. They are going to aid Piedmont-Sardinia in a number of ways, supplies, weapons, some troops, in their goal of uniting Italy into a country. Now, we have that in a separate video. Mainly understand that the rationale was that they really just wanted to kind of shaft the Austrians. The Austrians controlled much of northern Italy at that time, and if the Italians were able to unify, that would really hurt Austria economically. It would also just hurt them, mentally, if you will. And so that was a big deal. They also get something out of it. They're going to get an expansion, if you will, out of it. And the Duchy of Savoy, or Savoy, I believe. Sorry, it's Savoy right up here. As well as the port of Nice. All right, they're going to get control of this area. Absolutely huge. Expands their country a little bit. It's an economic boom. So this was a win. But ultimately, the final failing will be in the Franco-Prussian War, which again I discuss in the Unity of Germany, but just understand that in their final wars of unity, the Prussians will go to war with the French, and succeeding or after this war, they are going to become the nation that is known as Germany, and the French just get hammered. That's all you have to know. And this war actually, it ends the reign of Napoleon III. After the Battle of Sedan, if you see here on the right, this is Otto von Bismarck, and this is Napoleon III having been captured. He eventually will abdicate and go to exile in Britain, and France will have to change governments yet again, which we'll get there. But a very dynamic rule. Okay, we have about a 20-year rule here where you see massive ups and downs. Domestically overall with Napoleon III, things went pretty well. Everything was pretty efficiently run. You had expanded rights for people. However, foreign policy did not work super well, and in the end resulted in some pretty big failures. All right, guys, so we'll be talking about this more in class, and I'll see you soon.